other than survivors like Liz, and I've talked to a number of them, there's really no one else that is more embedded in this story, been there from the beginning, has tracked the lives and the challenges of these survivors than one person that I'm very familiar with. But before we bring her on, let me just play a little something that will refresh recollection about her involvement in this particular endeavor. I think you might remember this.
The disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein is dead.
Did he kill himself? Was he killed?
There was something happening here that was bigger than just Jeffrey Epstein.
He was known as this Gatsby-like figure of mystery.
He was stunningly rich. He had a $20 million house, his own private island in the Caribbean.
He has a nickname, the Pedophile Island.
In 2005, the Palm Beach Police Department received reports of young women going to and from his residence.
There was an ever-revolving door of girls.
Who else was underage?
All of them. Those girls brought other girls too.
It's a trade, and it goes on and on and on.
This case would put him in prison the rest of his life.
Have you ever solicited a minor for prostitution?
I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Somehow, his lawyers had worked out a deal with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
It was more evidence of the fact he was powerful and he could fix when everything came up.
This case was one of the worst failures of the criminal justice system.
There was no way that anybody could look at this and think this was okay.
There are enough survivors that refuse to give up.
I want justice.
He's dead, but he did not act alone. None of them have been held accountable.
Start digging into his life, pulling out this spider web of people.
This is the tip of a much bigger iceberg.
Take them down. Take everybody down.
The monsters are still out there.
You took our freedom, now we're going to take yours.
Boy,
wow.
I forgot that at the end there you see Virginia Giuffre,
right,
who of course is no longer with us.
Right.
So yeah, anybody who hasn't seen that, for both of you who haven't seen that series, circle back and see it again if you haven't.
Right.
And obviously the Ghislaine Maxwell, The Monster Behind the Monster, which was the follow-up to that.
Right.
Right.
And we've been devoting our days or 2 days on this because when you see what Mark Epstein had to say last night and you see what the victims have to say today, and we're going to talk to Lisa Bryant, you're going to understand why we feel as lawyers, as people, that Jeffrey Epstein was silenced, that he did not silence himself. So.
Yeah. So I worked hard on this get, as we say in the business. I was able to bring my lovely bride, Lisa Bryant, into the mix. Hello there. How are you?
Hi, from the next room.
Yes. I want to tell a story.
Hi, Lisa. You have a co-host, Domino? Is
Domino helping?
Domino is sleeping right now, but
we'll
see how it goes.
So let me tell this story because I think it's important for people to understand how embedded you were with this story. So, and for those I've told it to before, apologize, but it's a great story. Everybody knows what Life 360 is. It's that app on your phone that allows you to track and monitor family members. So that little island you saw in the trailer from Netflix, what's it called again? Little St. James? Was that what it was called? His island, the one he owned?
Yeah, just you fly into the Virgin or St.
Right,
Thomas.
So St. Thomas, and then it's so he owns this island. Yep. So she goes there to check him out, check out the island.
I mean, Lisa goes.
Lisa,
there, right.
yeah, that's the she.
Twice.
And so, yeah, twice. And this is, remember, this is not just when he's still alive, right? He's still out, free. And so she goes there by herself, meets a cameraman, whatever. So they're at a hotel that's just off the coast or on the coast, the island, just a little boat ride, like 10-minute boat ride, 15 minutes across the harbor there to get to that island. Mm-hmm. And so I'm tracking her, it's like 2 a.m. I just want to make sure, she checks in. And her locator comes up like in the middle of this jungle area, not at the hotel where she's supposed to be. So I'm, of course, freaking out a little bit. And Lisa's one of these people that if our son or daughter want to call at 4 a.m, she answers. I mean, it's everybody else might be screened out, but they're getting through. And so at a certain point, I guess I'll call. And he goes right to voicemail. So I'm like, what is going on? And I'm freaking out. And, the story ends better than it was for me that night because I finally get a hold of her in the morning. Oh, yeah, I just turned off my phone and went to sleep. Well, thanks a lot for that. And she was fine. Obviously, Life 360 and these location software, they're not perfect. So she was nearby.
We need Mike Easter on the data.
To track the cell phone locator. Anyway, so that was one of the many moments. And I saw in that trailer, too, another piece of video I forgot about. And that's where you were outside his place in New York, right? You're just out there.
Correct.
You're staking his place out. And so you have video of him exiting. And I don't know, with a girl, right?
With a girl in a fur coat. She probably was in her early 30s, maybe late 20s. But definitely she was someone, a good friend. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very interesting
there's
what
more
Lisa.
behind that.
Very interesting what Lisa does. That just brings up to me Turtle Boy, right? Lisa is outside his place, right? If you were in Massachusetts, Norfolk County, Lisa would have been arrested
That's right.
for intimidation instead of for proper journalism, what she was doing.
Yep, you're right. You're right. So let's talk about this latest development, which we've covered with both Mr. Epstein's brother, Mr. Epstein, and also with Liz. What's your initial thought on the government suggesting, first, there is no list?
Well, I'm going to give my overall reaction because there was really, I think, 3 or maybe even 4 main takeaways or points. I think it just was a failed attempt to shut down the public that really backfired. It re-traumatizes the victims, gives no real answers, and really just angers the public that really has this insatiable appetite and right to know about this story. I think it's going to fuel and already is fueling, more fire, more conspiracy theories, or just the need for more answers. It just, makes it look suspicious. I think that's really my take in a nutshell. I kind of call BS on it. Having done, I want to back up a little bit because, like you started to say, when I started doing this, working on that series, which aired in 2020, I believe. Now I can't believe it's been that long. I started working on it in November of 2018 when he was still very much alive. Still trafficking girls to his island, even though he claimed, and they'd like to. The government would like you to believe that, oh no, that stopped after he got out of jail in 2008. Remember, he had that slap on the wrist where he left jail every day to go to his office and have sex with girls and then go back to jail at night, and then got out early for doing so. But, I tried to talk to him. I staked out his Florida home when I knew it was there, staked out the New York home. We did get those photos. I did actually knock on the door, or actually rang the buzzer to the gate at his Florida house, which is very, infamous now. Actually, it's gone, been knocked down. But rang the buzzer. I knew he was there because we tracked his plane, and there's a lot of help I had. But we were tracking his plane, seeing when he was landed, because we wanted to do, hey Jeffrey, how are you? Right in his face. Any girls inside? But rang the buzzer. The doorman said he wasn't there. I said, oh, I'll just wait. Are you sure he's not there? I thought I saw him come in. Anyway, that was all like 8 months before, he was arrested. But I'll just say this was the hardest story, as you can imagine, ever, for many reasons. To get anyone to talk, particularly when he was alive, it did become easier, after what happened. But we had already delivered our first rough cut, and what we had, mostly after calling literally everybody in the black book, everybody on any list of any kind that we could find, and never heard of him. I don't know him, never met him. I must be a mistake. No, I would never consider doing any of it. Might have met him once at a party. I'm just in that photo because he photobombed me, whatever. I mean, every excuse. And, I met with a number of survivors, that were just afraid, talked to a number that would think about it. We ended up in our first hour, was a 4-part series with the first cut these into the network. We had one girl on camera one girl who was in silhouette, and we had I can't remember if we had the Palm Beach police chief in, or we just had to use his deposition because I hadn't convinced him yet that he should do it, because he was also worried about how he was going to be portrayed. So it was kind of crazy, very stressful, and also gut wrenching to learn these details. But all that to say, then fast forward to July, I'm at the movie theater with you, Michael. You remember I got the call as we were walking out of the movie theater from private investigator Mike Fiston, who worked with Brad Edwards, the main attorney who was chasing him for all these years. Said, Lisa, did you hear Epstein got arrested at Teterboro? I'm like, what? Oh my God. Everything changed. We started over, was kind of, had this powwow. I think we were like on a Friday night or something, and had to just really start over. But the good thing is it did open up. More of the survivors felt comfortable in talking. The girl in silhouette said she would go reshoot her on camera. So people did start to talk about it, but it's still most people, who were a friend or potentially a co-conspirator, or certainly someone who might have partaken in some of the activities, still wanted nothing to do with it. So it was very difficult. And
so on the video, and to that point, Liz, she already right now she's not willing to talk about some of the folks she was with, the powerful, because she's afraid of that. So that cloud hangs over this story still. But what about?
Let me say something about Liz though before you get into that, because I have to say I've stayed in touch with several survivors, Liz being one of them, and I am just so proud of her. I think she is so strong and so impressive, and has really just been through hell and back. But she's way on the other side, and many of the survivors, as we know, we can talk about Virginia maybe a little bit later. We can talk about her now. I was invited to her memorial, and it was very lovely and moving and emotional. But there's survivors that can make it. They can make it through a little bit, and it's always, even Liz, she's still a work in progress and has to stay in therapy or whatever. But some aren't as lucky. There's been a number of suicides among the survivors, drug overdoses. But there also are, many that have come through, and, even though their lives have been, damaged forever. But I just wanted to, thank Liz for her, candor, her willingness to share. And she's an educator now, and she's a good friend, and she really did a great job.
She's amazing. And I'm afraid that there are far more that have done far less well after the fact than she. I don't think she's typical.
It took her a very long time to get there, though, and
she's still scared, Lisa. She's still petrified about and we stayed away from the two questions, and these are the questions Mizzou Mom brings up. What year is this? I've often wondered about the relationship with Lex Wexner and the Limited, a learner, VSL. She mentioned working for the Limited. They're still scared. I mean, they're still scared out there
because of names like Les Wexner and all these people on. And let's talk about the list. That there is no list. Liz is correct. They aren't stupid enough to have a list. I mean, when we think of a list, we think of like a piece of paper that's going to have Jeffrey Epstein's list, and Epstein, each time he knocks one off, he's going to write down whatever that's. No, but the list, really, you can compile your own list based on information that's already been released, because some people in the Black Book, the very lengthy Black Book, are 100% involved, right? Not everybody, most not, probably, because it's, I don't know how there's.
How about the plane? How about the plane
500
travel?
The flight logs. A lot of those people are either, a lot of them are victims, survivors. A lot of them are people who are complicit, who are helping out. We didn't talk, we'll have to talk a little bit about that. But yeah, a lot of those people on that in the flight logs are guilty of something, and something not good, generally speaking. So you could pull out some of, I have a little bit more knowledge probably than the general public, just because I've been, following this for so long. But, without hardcore proof such as a sex tape showing them actually doing something. It's very, very difficult, as you guys know, to prosecute people for, you know, sex trafficking, and people are scared to death to come forward, even if they did have some proof, and the government's not going to give you the proof if they have it, which they might in certain cases. Although I do have some sort of tips that Ghislaine is, you know, looking to get out a little earlier than 20 years, and perhaps finally she might be willing to name a couple of people. I don't know that, you know, I don't believe it's done. I think there's a little bit going on in the FBI. You know, they can't tell you if they're, you know, investigating someone, let alone who that person might be. But
let me ask you about the video, because you mentioned, you know, that there's no smoking gun in the form of video. But anybody who believes there aren't videos from those houses, from those locations, and that everything was just child porn that was downloaded by Jeffrey Epstein, and therefore the government is not going to share that, is, I'm sorry, not bright. Where's all that stuff?
Well, there's 100%. There's definitely video, and even, you know, Pam Bondi acknowledged she called everything child porn. Well, I think that is 100% not true. They, you know, all the, well, not every survivor, many of the survivors that I spoke with, they all have seen cameras in multiple houses, especially ones who have been to many houses. The Florida situation with just the high school girls, those girls were mainly limited to Florida, with the exception of maybe Virginia. And very few weren't just in high school that just stayed in Florida. But they saw cameras, and they, you know, that was like a threat held over their head too, that they had cameras, and you know, so we do know. I think I will say part of the issue could be that it's pixelated, and it's hard to 100% prove who might be in that video, but I don't really believe that either. But that's also something that, you know, law enforcement has said is, you know, because I think how is there not footage, right? And, you know, maybe Ghislaine Maxwell, you know, has her own copy buried somewhere else. She knows where the bones are buried. So let's hope she does come forward, because I think, you know, there are so many people, as we know, thousands of victims. You know, let's say there's only 200 Johns, maybe, or that's a lot of people. So they need to be held accountable, and hopefully, you know, I think the public keeping this going puts pressure, certainly, to find answers. It also can spin out of control a little bit with some wild, you know, theories. But I think after some of these people are older, and after certain unnamed individuals pass, which might not be that long, I think we're going to see some more activity and more names. And you know, I don't, you know, these people unfortunately won't be prosecuted, but because they're very powerful. But I do think it will open up the door to some more answers that people have been looking for.
But Lisa, I mean, it just seems to me that talking to her, she felt that Liz, she felt she couldn't be protected. I don't know anyone who felt they could be protected. Michael, Bryant, and I, we're just like people off the street. We think that he was offed, right? We think he was silenced. And you know, with this culmination of no video, no this, no that, no list, no checking the cells. You know, so what is a normal person, survivor, who's trying to rehab their life and wants to see at least some justice? Even Ghislaine Maxwell, what does she think? I mean, has she ever said she's remorseful, or does this send a message to her, you better keep your mouth shut, because same thing could happen to you?
Well, that's a good point. I think people have wondered why. I mean, what's in it for her other than her own threats against her life if she does mention people? You know, at one time we thought she was gonna, you know, say, you know, some things about Prince Andrew, but you know, she's really protected him, and you know, anyway, it's a tricky thing, and we'll see what happens with her. But I have heard that she may try to, once the administration changes hands, come forward and speak a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, again, that's pure, I don't know if it's speculation. It's some sources, but who knows, right? People, it's hard to say. I don't want to go down a conspiratorial rabbit hole, but it's kind of what I'm hearing in my my own rabbit holes, which are sometimes different than others.
But who's behind Jeffrey Epstein? Who's behind him? Who was the money people behind him? They got him the island. They got him the planes.
Lex Wexner. Lex Wexner was his first and only client initially when he started his own business. Remember, he worked at Bear Stearns. After he kind of got fired from Bear Stearns, he started his own company, Intercontinental Assets Group or something. And it was very conspicuous because Les Wexner was his only client initially, and he would only then take clients that had, at least $1 million. In 1982, he started to work. He represented Adnan Khashoggi. There's long been speculation that he might have been not necessarily an informant for the CIA, but working, along with the CIA, helping provide some information. These are big, scary, powerful people. He had this passport from Austria that was discovered in 2019 in his home, but it was from 1982 when he was, and it said his residence was Saudi Arabia and had a fake name. And that's when he was working with Adnan Khashoggi. Was he helping, broker arms deals and doing that undercover with the CIA? I don't know. But it's an interesting thing to think about. But I don't know what your original question was. I kind of went on a sidebar, but
let me hit some of the questions that our folks have here, and especially this one relating to Ghislaine Maxwell, because you were all involved in that as well. I remember the day of that verdict because it was federal court, so no cameras. It was New York, no cameras, and I think you were in the courtroom and you came basically running out and were announcing the verdict before other people were getting it. So this question from Lady Adai too. I thought they used the list in Ghislaine's trial. So what were they? Because I've seen posts, people like, well, if there's no list, why is Ghislaine Maxwell still in prison? So explain in that trial what they used and why it's not the list.
Well, we had 4 victims / survivors who were underage who testified. There was no list presented in trial. No. Right. But there were 4 women who were underage when they were abused, and she was involved in either setting up the grooming, and there was, a lot of proof, very strong, brave women, 2 of whom used, let's see, Annie Farmer used her name. But anyway, it's just, the list is something that you have to kind of put together yourself, I think, from various court reports. A lot of the names are redacted. A lot of that is redaction from court documents is to protect the victims, but it also there's protecting some Johns, I would bet. I think in some of them they even admitted, because one was fighting at the end when these papers were released. They even said, this John had been fighting and I think he successfully won. Surprise, to get his name, his name redacted. But you could put together a list of names. I mean, you can look through and see,
but it wasn't
just
a
matter
factor in the trial. It wasn't a factor. So for those that are concerned that, hey, there is no list, therefore that's a get out of jail free card. Wrong. And we heard Liz talk about she guesstimated, or she had compiled what she said was 1,000 victims / survivors. What's your take on that?
That's what in the DOJ statement. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Actually, when you call.
In fact, she read part of that. That's where she read that. I'm sorry. That's what she read.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that number? And is that just pulled out of the rear ends or what?
No, I think it's true. There's at least
it maybe too small, right?
Maybe too small. It may be too small. Who knows? I mean, this went on for 30 years, right? So there was really 3 stages of his sex trafficking operation and Ghislaine Maxwell's part in it. It was really only in 2.5 sections of it, really, because in the early 90s, they had a much different, she was really out there. They presented themselves as a couple. They would go to, there's a well-known story about going to Interlochen summer camp where one of the survivors, might have been one who testified, was a camper there. And she was even they were grooming really the mother. They, oh, your daughter has so much promise. So the grooming factor with Ghislaine and Jeffrey even working on the parents to gain their trust, and I can really help, achieve, the dreams. And they targeted these people that clearly had nothing. And then fast forward to the early 2000s. That's when the high school thing kicked into gear. She and Jeffrey were kind of a couple earlier. They broke up. She, started dating, and but she was still very much, in his debt, really. I think he held things over her. She kind of hunkered down on the island while he started this Florida thing, and these high school girls started to recruit each other. I mean, it's the craziest thing. I think that's the fascination and it's so shocking. Because there's a lot of sex trafficking. Diddy's thing, there's nothing grosser in the world than Diddy's. Ugh, so gross. But Epstein's, just the scope and the scale, the people involved, and the methods used. And it's crazy that the high school girls in recruiting themselves, but that the women are, that they targeted, had a way of just, they're manipulated, and they're manipulating their friends. They're so young, they can't make these decisions.
And there were, all of them were in, poor straits, so to do $200 to come give a guy a massage is like, sign me up.
Yeah, and the whole massage thing, to someone like that, probably never even had a massage. It seemed kind of intriguing, and this rich guy, and he's kind of handsome at that, at time. He was kind of now it makes you want to throw up, but
that's not cute, right?
There were a couple of high schools, but one of our, survivors told us, and I remember being stunned by her soundbite. I said, "How many women from your high school do you think were recruited?" First I asked her how many because she recruited people, but they all recruited people, so not all, everyone, but a lot of, especially the high school girls, the underage girls. I said, "How many people do you think from your high school, gave massages and went over to Epstein's place?" And she said, "Oh, 200 easy." And I was like floored. And I put that soundbite in our cut to the network. They made me take it out because they didn't believe it. I believe it.
I absolutely believe it.
Well, I 100% believe it now. I mean, I believed it then, but I think they thought the public was going to not get it or believe it. But look what we know now. And I look back and I'm like, damn, I wish we could, had been able to keep that. But that's how it works.
Good call, Netflix. Good job.
Now they'd say, hey, that's really too low. Linda,
right, exactly.
I love this name. Linda says, "I blame the CIA totally." Any indication of the CIA involved in this, Lisa?
It's long been rumored. There's even a document that says something about this. I forget the phrase. CIA, but something indicating possible involvement with the CIA on a government document. So,
right.
But they just won't explain any of that because they're gonna look bad. And who are they covering up for? I mean, we know there's politicians involved.
Issue, right.
We do know that there's politicians involved. We know that there's CEOs and attorneys and all kinds of people. I mean, who are these people, right? That's like, as Liz was saying, we need to know.
I have to tell you, Lisa. I have to tell you this. We got attacked today by somebody who said, "Keep politics out of your shows," but you can't because this spanned 2 administrations, right? Yeah. It's not, and various people, Democrat, Republican. So we're not attacking. We're not talking about politicians. We're talking about
Bill Clinton was on the island. Bill Clinton was on the island. Virginia Giuffre was there and had lunch with him and said he was the nicest guy. Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
so
wow.
nobody's really, saying, I don't have any reason to think like Clinton was. Who knows though? He was on the plane. He's on the flight log. So it's very
any political connection is an aside. It's it may be motivating investigations or lack thereof, but this is not a political show. I have a question for you. This I think was to Liz, but we did that pre-recorded, but you may know from your conversations with her. The question was from Brooklyn, which she interviewed by the FBI. Do you know if they ever talked to her?
I don't think they did.
I don't think they did either, based on what she told us about other stuff. I don't think she was ever talked to.
She, like many, felt like she wasn't going to be believed. She initially, wasn't believed, really, wasn't awarded money. in the compensation fund. I think she did eventually get a settlement, but not, like the others. It's complicated if you don't have proof, as in some sort of email from them or her, one of the people that is known to have worked with them. It's very difficult to move forward with a case.
So let me
which is
ask you
sad.
this, Lisa. This is one person, Jeffrey Epstein, right? We know that sex trafficking, and we know that hitting on young people and using young people and this coercive control, it just can't be limited to Jeffrey Epstein. When you were investigating this, did you investigate, or were you able to find out or see that this was a huge worldwide problem, not limited to Epstein?
Oh, just overall, yes. I
Yeah.
mean, I learned so much more. I think there's such a misunderstanding about sex trafficking. It's a very complex issue. It's often misunderstood due to really a lack of awareness, and also like media portrayals that just aren't accurate, and that really just perpetuates victim blaming, I think, and shaming. They don't understand consent. They don't understand, that a child can't give consent. And even honestly, when you're 19, yeah, maybe you might be of age, your brain isn't formed. You're not really an adult. I think it's 25 is kind of when your frontal cortex is, formed, really enough to be considered an adult. But to make adult decisions. I think not understanding grooming and all that, it just, yeah. There's so much sex trafficking, but I think people also tend to think that sex traffickers, they pull you out of an alleyway at night and they, kidnap you and then take you and tie you up. And, there's just a total, misconception of what sex trafficking is. Sex trafficking can be someone who looks like Ghislaine Maxwell, who is, she was, certainly in a higher class, or, she was wealthy, she was pretty, she was nice, but yet she's a sex trafficker. She's not, and female sex traffickers, I think there's 5% of all trafficking, of all sex traffickers are women. It's a really low number. So, someone like Ghislaine, it gives the victims more opportunity to relax and let their guard down. So it was very easily for her to manipulate, and the way she presented herself to groom, people so successfully, more so than him.
Yeah. Wow. Explain to us the concept of grooming, because this has come up in a lot of different cases, and one we're covering in a different state involving a police officer.
Well, I think the first step really is, and I'm not, going to claim I'm an expert in really anything, but I'll give you my take on what I learned for sure, is the first step really is spotting a vulnerable victim, someone who's financially disadvantaged, or maybe perhaps already had some sexual trauma in their past. I think sexual predators like Epstein and Maxwell, they have an eye for picking out someone who is in need of something, and they identify that need, and then they just exploit it. And if you pair a teenage girl with, some brilliant narcissistic billionaire, they're, like I said, their brain is not equipped to understand or even react. And you also, when someone actually is touched, many of the, women in the series say, they just froze. Like, they're so stunned. They don't know. Like, there's this one survivor who, she goes, the classic thing for these underage girls was, somebody recruited them from either school or from the mall. And then they couldn't even drive, would have somebody pick them up. Some were as young as like 14, 15, couldn't drive, in a cab, or have them picked up by the driver to come there to give the massage. Then another young girl, not much older than them, would walk them up the stairs and take them up to the massage room. And then if this is their first time, like, they don't even know, and they say, okay, now, Jeff, you have to take your clothes off. So at least go down to your, bra and underwear, but you'll get maybe $300 if you take your bra off. And this one was like, I have to take my bra off? And she's like, yeah, you do that. And she's like, that's how it works in massage, and so, these other women who've been kind of convinced, because they're getting money, they're getting $200 to bring the girl who's getting either $200 or $300 to give the massage that then turns sexual. So it's
I don't want to interrupt, but it's like a pyramid scheme. You've got, these folks who they kind of take themselves out of the actual hands-on massage to take a smaller cut, but that's more palatable for them to bring in others who will do the dirty work, and they still get their cut off the top. It's disgusting.
Well,
okay,
but they're victims too. Honestly, a lot of them. And almost all of the all these other co-conspirators, the other recruiters, most all of them are victims too. They're Ghislaine Maxwell claimed she was, I think, at the trial that she was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. That was part of the defense. And in some ways, I hate to even really say that because we know what she's done, but it's probably true. He held a lot of things over her head. She knew everything. She could never really escape. She wanted out of it after that high school age, but then she still had, I think, so many debts to pay with him, or he just said, you can, or I'll turn you in, or I'll tell you, whatever. Who knows what threats, she received, but she was still kind of she was a helicopter pilot, which is kind of interesting. She would helicopter the girls from, not all the time, but she liked to fly a helicopter and she had her license. She would meet some of the girls in St. Thomas and then fly them from there in her helicopter over to the little island. And I think enjoyed that part of it because she loved to fly her helicopter. But that was kind of an interesting sidebar.
Well, this has been fascinating.
It's a lot.
It's fascinating, but I'll tell you what. The more you talk, the more it convinces me that there's no way Jeffrey Epstein at 6:31 or 6:32 in the morning in August of 2019 killed himself in the Metropolitan Correction Institution. No way.
No,
I agree.
Not a chance.
Yeah, I have to say that now. Initially, I was leaning like, okay, I'm going to try to, he knew his life was over. He took his own life. I'm trying to, take this at face value. And we presented both sides, of course, in the docu-series. But now I have to say I'm a little bit more that way because I found your interview with his brother, Mark, fascinating yesterday. That was a great get. He, all the information as a family member, he wasn't given. No 911 call. Oh, that disappeared too, along with the other 2 cameras, along with the minute of video that's missing out of 10 hours that took 6 years to get to begin with, that you can't see anything except for maybe somebody who might be wearing a jumpsuit way in the distance, slowed down at this speed. I mean, they really think the American people are stupid. I just don't understand, I just don't get it. So I think anybody following this case, I think everybody following this case would actually need, even more so now, to see Epstein actually committing suicide in a video to believe it.